Mothers lock their doors and whisper one warning.
Do not step outside. Do not make a sound.
Because on that afternoon, the spirit of Lake Umuma rises. One hungry 14-year-old boy didn't listen. He went to fish, and then he saw her. A woman seated on a golden stool, combing hair that shimmered like sunlight on water. When their eyes met, he vanished. No splash, no scream, just silence. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. In the heart of Igbo land, where hills rolled like slumbering giants and palm trees whispered secrets to the wind, there lay the town of Umogim. In Umogim, there was a lake called Omuma. It was not like other lakes. Its waters were so dark and deep that even the bravest men spoke of it in hushed tones, as though the lake itself might hear them and take offense. The surface was always calm, too calm, the elders said, and sometimes, if you stood at the bank and listened carefully, you could hear strange music drifting up from the depths, music that sounded like women singing. Life followed the Igbo 4 market day cycle of Eke, Ore, Afo, and Nkwo. But Oye Day in Umogim was particularly different from other days because Oye was as their largest market. The market was situated at the far end of town and attracted other neighboring towns and villages who came to either buy or sell their commodities. The market was a chaotic symphony of shouting traders, haggling over prices, exchanging pleasantries, and sometimes quarreling. In some sections of the market were the smell of fermented wet cassava flour and locust beans. On Oye afternoon, when the sun is high, the heat is heavy, the kind that makes the air shimmer above the earth roads. Usually, a village is full of sound. Children playing, women pounding yams or cassava fufu, men making climbing ropes or long baskets. But on Oye days, Umogim was a ghost town. Most families had already trekked distances away to the big Oye market in the far end of the town to sell their wares. Those left behind were the sick, the elderly, and the children. Parents would lock their doors and warn their kids, do not step outside, do not make a sound, the slave raiders are out and the spirit is watching. Silence lay over the village like a heavy blanket. There were 2 main reasons for keeping indoors during the period. The Aro slave traders. In those dark centuries, kidnappers moved like leopards through the villages and farms, looking for unattended children to sell into the transatlantic. It was also believed that on this specific day, the water goddess, the Mermaid of Umuma, emerged from the depths to bathe in the sun. She wanted privacy, and if you disturbed her, you didn't just get a scolding, you disappeared. Nobody had ever seen her and lived to tell about it, but everybody had believed it. The water would swallow them whole, and the lake would return to its perfect stillness, as though it had never been disturbed. Some said she drew them into her underwater kingdom to serve her for eternity. Others whispered that she kept them as pets, like a child keeping fireflies in a clay pot. But everyone agreed on one thing. Once you went down to that lake on Oye afternoon, you never came back. Nobody had ever seen her and lived to tell about it. In a small, weathered compound tucked away from the main path, Ike sat on a wooden stool. He was 14 with the lean, wiry frame of a boy who grew up working the farms, but with eyes that held a dangerous spark of curiosity. His mother, Enuma, was a widow whose life had been etched by the harshness of survival. Since his father died, she had become a shield between Ike and the world.
I understand. Promise me
Ike,
you'll be brave.
look at
I
me,
promise.
Enuma
Good.
said that morning, her
The sun
hands
is high.
stained with the
The Oyo
palm oil
spirits are
she was
moving.
preparing to sell. She gripped his shoulders with a strength born of desperation. The sun is high.
The world
The
is
Oye
dangerous.
spirits
You
are
must be
moving.
careful.
Do not,
Promise
for
me
the
you'll be
sake of
brave.
your father's
I
spirit,
promise. Good.
open that door. There is cornmeal in the pot. Eat it, sleep, and wait for the sun to drop below the horizon. Do you hear me?
You must be careful.
I hear you, mother,
Promise me you'll be
Ike
brave.
replied,
I promise.
though his gaze was fixed on the floor. As soon as she left, the silence descended. It was heavy. It was thick. It felt like the walls were leaning in to listen to his heartbeat. Ike looked at the clay pot. Inside was the remains of cornmeal. For 2 days, this had been his only fuel. It was bland, dry, and stuck to his throat like sawdust. The thought of taking another bite made his stomach turn with a physical nausea. Outside, he knew the lake was teeming with fish. He could almost smell the fresh silver-scaled tilapia frying over a fire. He could almost taste the sweet, fatty meat of a catfish simmered in peppers. Stories, Ike whispered to the empty room. Just stories to keep us afraid. He thought of the groups that occasionally went to the lake on Oye days when there was dire need of water on Oye afternoon. He had seen them. They would stand on the hill, banging metal basins and screaming obscenities into the air. They believed the noise would shoo the mermaid away like scaring a hawk from a chicken coop. They would rush down, dip their pails, pots, and run back up the hill as if the devil himself were at their heels. None would want to take the rear. But Ike didn't want all those stories and activities. He wanted to eat. With a defiance that only a hungry teenager can possess, he reached under his sleeping mat. He pulled out a fishing line made of white nylon string that had turned brown with death and a small gourd filled with fat, wriggling earthworms. He didn't make a sound. He didn't bang a basin. He slipped out of the hut like a ghost entering a graveyard. The walk to Lake Umuma was surreal. The heat of the afternoon sun was intense, but as Ike drew closer to the water, the temperature plummeted. The air became moist and smelled of ancient moss and lilies. He didn't take the main path. He moved through the high elephant grass, his heart drumming against his ribs. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot in the Oye silence. He reached the brow of the hill overlooking the lake. The sight took his breath away. The lake was a vast shimmering sheet of sapphire. The ivory sands at the bank looked like powdered silver, but there was no sound, no frogs croaking, no ripples from a diving bird. The world was held in a golden supernatural vacuum. Ike began to descend the slope. He moved with the stealth of a hunter, his eyes scanning the shoreline. He was looking for a spot to cast his line, but as he rounded a large moss-covered boulder, his entire reality shattered. There, less than 20 paces away, sat a woman. She wasn't a villager. Her skin was a mesmerizing, fair complexion that seemed to glow from within, like a lamp behind a thin sheet of silk. She was seated on a stool that shone with the unmistakable luster of pure, polished gold. She was turned away from him at a 3/4 angle, her silhouette framed against the sparkling water. In her hand, she held a standing mirror made of a metal Ike didn't recognize. It was too bright to be silver. She was combing her hair. Ike had never seen hair like this. It wasn't the tight coils of his people. It was a cascading waterfall of golden thread that reached down past her waist, shimmering with every stroke of the comb. She was adjusting a dress that looked as if it had been woven from the moonlight itself, glittering, translucent, and shifting in color between seafoam green and deep violet. Ike stood frozen. The fishing line slipped from his fingers. Every story his mother had told him, every warning from the elders rushed back into his mind. This was the queen of Omuma. This was the reason for the silence. Slowly, as if sensing a moth entering her web, the lady turned. Her eyes were not the eyes of a human. They were massive, electrifying, and magnetic. The moment her gaze locked onto his, the world around Ike began to dissolve. The blue sky turned to gold. The red earth turned to glass. The last thing he felt was a strange, terrifying pull, as if his soul was being drawn through a needle's eye. Then, the silence of Umogim was replaced by the roar of an underwater kingdom.
Ike opened his eyes. Instead, he was standing in a most opulent place you've ever seen, and then multiply it by 10. Everything was gold. The walls, the floors, the high arched ceilings, they all hummed with a soft golden light. There were no torches, no windows, just this eternal warm glow. He wasn't alone. The vast hall was filled with people, hundreds of them. But there was something strange about them. They shimmered, fading in and out of view like a bad television signal. And there she was, the queen. In her domain, she didn't hide what she was. From the waist up, she was the beautiful woman from the lake. But from the waist down, a magnificent iridescent fishtail, scales gleaming with colors that had no name. Ike felt a wave of calm wash over him. It was a sedative peace. In this kingdom, there was no anxiety, no hunger, no pain. He looked at the other people. They moved with clockwork efficiency, serving the queen, polishing the gold, arranging strange, beautiful flowers. Ike joined them. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask, "Who are you?" or "Where am I?" In this underwater world, curiosity didn't exist. Nobody spoke. They communicated in a silent understanding. They were all brothers and sisters here, bound by the spell. But here is the trick of the spirit world. Time does not exist there. There was no sunrise to mark the morning, no sunset to mark the night, just the eternal golden day. Ike walked, he ate delicious food that appeared from nowhere, and he slept in a dreamless haze. To him, it felt like he had been there for a few days, maybe a week. He was happy. He was young. His skin remained smooth, his muscles strong. He was preserved like a fly in amber. But in the world above, seasons were changing. Kings were dying. Babies were being born. The wheel of time was turning, grinding forward without him. Eventually, after a period Ike could not measure, the mermaid decided his service was done. She summoned him to her throne. She looked at him with those magnetic eyes, now filled with a strange, cold kindness. She handed him 2 gifts. The first was a small handheld mirror with a golden frame. The second was a small, thick, dark bottle. It was heavy for its size and sealed tight with a black wax cork. Her voice echoed in his mind, clear as a bell. "You have served well. You will return to your people. I give you the gift of wealth. Whatever you touch shall prosper. You will be greater than any man in your town." She leaned forward, her expression darkening. "But hear this warning, child. This bottle, you must never open it. Do not uncork it for any reason. Guard it with your life. Do you understand?" Ike nodded, entranced. With a wave of her hand, she began to weave her final spell. She reached into his mind and wiped it clean. She erased the palace. She erased the other servants. She erased the 65 years he had spent in her court. She pushed him back out of the golden light and up towards the surface.
Ike blinked, shaking his head. He was standing on the bank of the Umuma lake. He looked around, confused for a split second. Did I fall asleep standing up? He thought. He shrugged it off. The hunger was back. The sun hit his eyes with a ferocity that made him wince. It was still the afternoon, or so it seemed. In his right hand, he gripped his crude fishing line. In his left, the small gourd of worms. Tucked into his simple waistcloth were the two gifts, the mirror and the dark, heavy bottle. Ike's mind was a blank slate. He felt like a boy who had just arrived 5 minutes ago to catch fish, exactly as he felt that Oye market afternoon he left his house. The hunger in his belly, the same hunger for something other than cornmeal, was still there, sharp and demanding. Just one fish, Ike whispered to the empty air. He baited his hook and cast it into the water near a cluster of lily pads. The water didn't ripple, it boiled. The moment the hook hit the surface, something massive seized it. This wasn't the nibble of a tilapia or the tug of a mudfish. It was a violent, predatory weight that nearly yanked Ike off his feet. "Help!" he cried out, his voice cracking with the high pitch of adolescence. To his surprise, answering shouts came from other side. A group of boys who had been fishing further down the bank came running. In Ike's memory, these were his peers, but something was off. Their faces were unfamiliar, their loincloths were made of a different weave, but there was no time for questions. The fish was a big fish, nearly the size of a grown man, with eyes like dull dinner plates and fins that cut through the water like rudder. It fought with a big strength, dragging Ike toward the deep center of the lake. Pull him back!" shouted the oldest of the group. With the combined strength of 5 boys, they hauled the creature onto the ivory sands. It flopped with a thunderous sound, gasping for air. The boys stood back in a circle, their faces pale with a mixture of awe and terror. "Nobody has ever caught a fish like this," one boy whispered, crossing himself. "Not in the history of Umogim. This isn't a fish, it's a message from the ancestors." The news of the historic catch spread through the lake area like a bushfire in the dry season. The sheer impossibility of the catch drew people out of the shadows. Old fishermen who usually fish in the lake crept down the hill to see the fish. The oldest fisherman in the village, a man whose skin looked like the bark of an old Iroko tree, knelt beside the fish. He poked its scales and looked at Ike. "Who is your father, boy?" the old man asked. Ike opened his mouth to say Otazi, but a strange fog filled his brain. The mermaid's aura was working. The magic didn't just protect Ike, it manipulated the perceptions of everyone around him. When they looked at Ike, they didn't see a stranger or a ghost. They saw a neighborhood boy whose name they couldn't quite recall, but whose presence felt acceptable. They felt a strange magnetic compulsion to ignore the gaps in his story. "I am just Ike," he said simply. The people nodded, satisfied by an answer that should have sparked 1,000 more questions. They were under the influence of the marine spirit, and in that haze, the legendary fish became the focus of their world, rather than the boy who shouldn't have been there. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, Ike dragged his share of the fish back toward his mother's compound. But when he reached his compound, he dropped the fish in the dust. The house was gone. Where his mother's hut stood, there was only a pile of collapsed mud and overgrown weeds. A tree was growing through where the living room used to be. Ike spun around, panic rising. "Mama! Mama!" An old woman walked by, leaning on a cane. She stopped and stared at him, her eyes widening in horror. "Who are you calling?" asked her voice trembling. "My mother, Umuma. I left her here this morning," Ike shouted. The old woman took a step back, making a sign to ward off evil. "Child, Umuma died 30 years ago. Her heart broke after her son Ike disappeared on Oye Day 60 years ago." Ike laughed nervously. "I am Ike. I am 14 years old." But the village knew better. The fortune tellers had long predicted this. They said the lost boy was not dead, that the mermaid had taken him. Ike was a relic, a boy out of time. His friends were grandfathers or in the grave. His mother was long buried. He was a stranger in his own land. He wandered a little distance away to the small hut of an old woman who lived alone. She was the first wife who had been cast out by her husband Ikemba for her inability to bear children. She was a woman who had spent decades living in the silence of her own loneliness. When Ike appeared at her door, the mermaid spell worked its final stitch. The old woman looked at the handsome 14-year-old boy and saw not a stranger, but a blessing. "You have no place to go, do you?" she asked softly. "No," Ike whispered. "Then you are my son," she said, "and I am your mother." The power of magic the mermaid had on him, nobody could see the heavy load of the remainder of the fish he was carrying. They caught the fish, cooked with it, and dried it all night. In the morning, Ike carried them to the market. The power of wealth that was pronounced on him by the mermaid came to play. He realized a good sum of money from the sales. He didn't know how it worked. He only knew that every business he touched turned to gold. If he bought a sack of palm kernels, they were the finest in the land and sold for triple the price. If he traded in cloth, the patterns were so vibrant they were sought after by kings in distant palm-fringed kingdoms. Within 3 years, the boy from nowhere became the wealthiest young man Umogim had ever known. He built a nice house, he wore robes of silk and coral. But every night before he slept, he would look at the dark sealed bottle sitting in his box. He would remember the queen's warning, the death of time cannot be cheated forever. He felt young, he felt strong, he felt invincible. He had no idea that 60 years of age was screaming inside that glass, waiting for a single moment of curiosity to tear his life apart. 3 years passed in a blur of wealth and success. Ike and the old woman lived comfortably, but secrets have a way of coming out. One afternoon, Ike traveled for business, and on his way back at a place called Ageyi Hill, he was walking back, feeling the vigor of youth, his pockets full of money. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit him. He stumbled. His legs, they felt incredibly heavy. Not tired, heavy, like his bones had suddenly turned to lead. He tried to walk briskly, but his feet dragged in the dust. Shuffle, shuffle. He gasped for air, his chest feeling tight. He staggered to a large oil bean tree by the roadside and collapsed at its base. "What is happening?" he panicked. "I'm young, I'm strong. I've never felt this way before." He looked at his hands resting on the tree roots. As he watched, the smooth skin began to wrinkle. Liver spots appeared. The veins bulged and turned dark. His knuckles swelled with arthritis. Miles away, in the quiet of their home, the catastrophe had already happened. The old woman had been cleaning Ike's room. She found the wooden box. Curiosity, that old human flaw, took over. She opened it. She saw the mirror, and she saw the dark, intriguing bottle. "What is this?" she wondered. "Foreign perfume? Medicine?" She gripped the wax cork. She twisted it. It was tight, but she was determined. With a soft pop, the cork came loose. It wasn't a smell that escaped. It was time. Back at the tree at Ageyi Hill, the 65 years of suppressed age crashed into Ike's body in seconds. His hair turned snow white, his teeth rattled, his back curved into a permanent hunch, his eyesight dimmed, a milky film covering his pupils. But worse than the physical pain was the mental flood. The memories returned. He screamed, but it was the raspy, dry scream of an old man. He remembered the lake, the queen, the golden palace, the servitude. He remembered the warning, "Do not uncork the bottle." The bottle hadn't held perfume. It had held his years. It had held the price of his time in the spirit world. It took him hours to walk the last mile home. He was no longer the handsome 17-year-old merchant. He was a fragile 82-year-old man leaning on a stick. When he finally pushed the door open, the old woman screamed, "Who are you? Get out! Where is my son, Ike?" Ike looked at her, tears leaking from his aged eyes. He saw the open bottle on the table. He saw the cork on the floor. "I am Ike," he whispered, his voice trembling. He sat her down. It took a long time, but he told her everything. The memories were sharp now. He explained the cornmeal, the hunger, the golden stool, and the 65 years that felt like a week. As he spoke, the old woman stared at him. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together. "Ike," she whispered, realizing the truth. "The son of Utazi? My husband, Nkemba, he was your uncle. He died mourning you." She reached out and held his withered, trembling hand. "The fortune tellers did not lie," she said softly. "They said the boy would return. You have returned." The story of Ike's transformation spread through the village like wildfire. People came to see the young tycoon turned ancient elder. It was undeniable proof of the mermaid's power. Ike and the old woman lived out the rest of their days together. They were an odd couple, two old souls thrown together by magic and tragedy. They possessed great wealth, but they knew the truth better than anyone. You can buy land, you can buy houses, but you cannot buy time. They adopted a boy who lived with them for the rest of their lives. And they say, if you go to Umogim today, the elders will tell you this story on Oye Market days. They will tell you to keep your children indoors, and they will tell you, if you ever find a dark, sealed bottle washing up on the shore of the Omuma lake, for the love of God, leave the cork alone. Would you have guarded the bottle better? Tell me in the comments, and like and subscribe for more stories.